I didn't go to Galveston that day to buy a child. I went to trade horses, buy seed, maybe grab a meal that didn't taste like dust. But then I walked past that warehouse, the one where they were auctioning off orphans and runaways for labor contracts. And I heard the auctioneer shout, "Healthy girl, 14, knows her letters, good with animals." Something made me stop. I stood in the back shadows, chewing my lip, hat in hand. Inside, the place stank of sweat and desperation. Rows of children in ragged clothes sat with blank faces, waiting to be sold like livestock. I told myself I was just looking. Then I saw her. She was a bone-thin girl with dirt-smudged skin and hair that hadn't seen a brush in months. Her dress was more patchwork than fabric, and she had holes in both shoes. But her eyes weren't like the others. Most of the kids looked dead inside, but hers were sharp, alert, dangerous. She scanned the room like a fox watching for traps. Not afraid, calculating, like she was already planning how to get out of whatever hell she ended up in next. $20, the auctioneer barked. She's a hard worker. No disease. Been on a cotton farm since she was 8. A man in the front, Briggs, a brutal farmer I knew from up north, shouted, 25. 30, came another call. And before I knew what I was doing, I stepped forward and said, 50. The warehouse went quiet. 50 was more than any of those kids were worth to most buyers. More than I'd ever spent on a ranch hand, let alone a child. The auctioneer grinned, greedy as a coyote. 50 from the gentleman in back. Do I hear 60? No one answered. They all knew better than to outbid Samuel McKinnon when his jaw was set like that. Sold. I signed the paper with a lump in my throat, not sure if I'd just done something noble or foolish. Her name was Rebecca Sullivan. Or so the slip said. Orphan. No kin. She'll work hard, the clerk muttered. But don't let her out of your sight. That one's tricky. As I approached her, she didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't thank me. She just looked me dead in the eye, and I swear to God, I saw pity. That girl had just been sold like a mule, and somehow, she felt sorry for me. The ride back to my ranch was long and quiet. Rebecca sat beside me on the wagon bench, hands folded in her lap, her gaze never still. She watched the horizon, the tree lines, the sky. I saw her glance at the sun's angle every so often, like she was memorizing the route home. Most kids that age would have asked questions, or at least looked afraid. Not her. She was studying, calculating, like everything around her was a map. You planning to run? I finally asked. She didn't look at me. Depends. On what? On whether you bought me to work, or for something else. Her voice was steady, like a poker player holding a good hand. I pulled the horses to a stop and turned to face her. You listen to me, girl. You're here to work, nothing else. Any man that lays a hand on a child don't deserve the dirt he walks on. You'll be safe on my land, or I'll die trying to make it so. Understand? Rebecca met my eyes for the first time since the auction, and for just a split second, the sharpness faded, and something softer flickered there. She nodded. All right then. We rolled into the ranch just before dusk. The main house sat like a stubborn old sentinel on a rise overlooking the valley. My wife Martha came out onto the porch when she heard the wagon. She was still pretty, even at 38, with strong hands and tired eyes. Years of trying for children had turned those eyes gray with disappointment. Who's this? She asked as I helped Rebecca down. This is Rebecca Sullivan. She'll be working around the house. Martha blinked. You bought her? I did. There was a moment of silence. Then Martha stepped down, put her arm gently around Rebecca's shoulders, and said, Lord, child, you look like you haven't eaten in a week. Come inside. I wasn't sure what I expected, suspicion, jealousy, maybe even anger. But what I saw on my wife's face was something like hope and desperation. Martha gave her a warm meal, then marched her upstairs to the spare bedroom, insisting she bathe and rest. She's not sleeping off the kitchen like some stray mutt, she told me sharply. She's a girl, a child, and she deserves a bed. That night, I sat alone on the porch and watched the wind stir the dry grass. I'd brought Rebecca home expecting a housemaid. Instead, I got silence, tension, and something I couldn't name just yet. By the next morning, Martha had cleaned out her old sewing chest and laid out clothes from when she was younger. She needs proper dresses, she said. Rebecca came downstairs freshly scrubbed, hair brushed, and looking almost like a different person. But those eyes, they hadn't changed. She started working right away. Dishes, chores, sweeping the porch, feeding the chickens. Not just obedient, efficient. She knew her way around a garden better than most grown hands. When I showed her the barn, she slipped right in, checking latches and inspecting feed like she'd grown up around livestock. Didn't even flinch when a young bull snorted at her. She's fast, I muttered to myself. She's hungry for something, Martha said. Over the next few weeks, the rhythm of the house shifted. Martha smiled more, talked more, cooked actual meals instead of stews made from habit. Rebecca's presence seemed to wake something up in her. But something gnawed at me. Late one night, I spotted Rebecca slipping out the back door. She didn't see me, not until I made a noise. She froze, then slowly turned. I was just walking, she said. Couldn't sleep. You scouting escape routes? Just needed to feel the air. I didn't press her, but when she walked past, I noticed a pocket knife tucked inside her apron. Smart. And dangerous. That night, I lay awake beside Martha and whispered, "She ain't like other girls." Martha sighed. None of us are. A month passed, then two. Rebecca never once asked for rest or reward. She worked like the world might end tomorrow. Up before dawn, chores done without complaint, even patching broken saddles and doctoring a sick calf like she'd been born to it. But I noticed things. She always knew where I kept the rifles. She memorized which hired men slept in which bunkhouse. I caught her once marking a notch into a wooden beam on the back porch, right where the moonlight hit, maybe tracking time, maybe something else. She was watching, always watching. Then came the night I heard a crash in the kitchen. I bolted from bed, grabbing the rifle by the door. Martha was already awake, her hand to her chest. What was that? I reached the kitchen in 3 long strides and saw Jake Winters slumped on the floor, blood dripping down his face. One of my youngest ranch hands, barely 20, dumb as a steer but always grinning. Rebecca stood above him, gripping a cast-iron skillet like it was a weapon, which, in that moment, it damn sure was. Jake moaned, trying to sit up. She hit me. I told you to leave. Rebecca snapped, voice low and deadly. What happened? I demanded. Jake pointed. I didn't do nothing. Just talking to her. She went crazy. I turned to Rebecca. He cornered me. Said things. Tried to touch me. I told him to leave. He didn't. Jake looked up, eyes wide. She's lying. No, I said. You are. I stepped between them. Get your things, Jake. You're off this ranch. Tonight. But the storm. I don't give a damn if it's raining fire. You lay a hand on anyone under my roof, you answer to me. Now go. Jake scrambled up, clutching his head. You'll regret this, he hissed. She's poison. I took one step forward and said, 10 minutes, or I'll help you pack with a boot. He fled. Rebecca didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She just set the skillet on the table and stood there, chest heaving. You all right? I asked. I'm fine. Where'd you learn to swing like that? She looked me dead in the eye. Streets of Galveston. Later that night, Martha tucked her in like a mother might. She didn't say much, just brushed Rebecca's hair and sat beside her until the girl's eyes finally closed. Then she came back downstairs, her face pale and set. We need to talk, she said. She poured us both a whiskey, which she hadn't done in years, and stared into the fire. She's not just a servant, Sam. I know. She's ours. I said nothing. The words felt dangerous in my mouth, like naming a wild animal your pet. I want to adopt her, Martha said quietly. Make her our daughter. My chest tightened. Martha, she's not an orphan. I stopped. What was she? A worker? A stray? A child with secrets? She has no family, Martha whispered. No home, but she could have one here. The fire crackled. Wind howled outside. I thought of how Rebecca had stepped forward with that skillet. No fear. No hesitation. She wasn't just surviving. She was fighting. We should ask her what she wants, I said. Martha nodded, but I saw the flicker in her eyes, the hope she couldn't quite suppress. Upstairs, Rebecca slept curled like a fox, guarded, but not alone. And I lay in bed wondering what kind of storm we'd just let into our hearts. The next morning, Rebecca didn't speak much. She went about her chores like nothing had happened, feeding chickens, fetching water, even helping the blacksmith patch a cracked horseshoe. But her eyes were sharper, quieter. She was thinking. After supper, she surprised me by knocking on the study door. Can I speak to you? I nodded and set my ledger aside. Martha was upstairs. The house was silent. Rebecca walked in and shut the door behind her. then stood there like she was about to confess to a crime. "I wasn't entirely honest when you bought me," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "My parents did die of fever. That part's true. But I wasn't just sleeping in alleyways. I worked for a man in Galveston. Garrett Mills." The name made my gut tighten. Mills was no cotton farmer. He ran the underground in Galveston. Gambling, smuggling, brothels, bribes. A man who made orphans disappear. What kind of work? Rebecca looked down. I ran numbers. Delivered messages. Watched who came and went. I was useful. Invisible. Smart. "You ran books for Mills?" She nodded once. "He trusted me. I saw things I wasn't supposed to." "And you left?" "I took something first. A little black ledger. Names, bribes, payment trails. I sewed it into my dress, the one you bought me in." I stood slowly. "Is that what he's after?" "I don't know. I thought I'd hidden well enough. But last week, I saw a movement on the ridge. A flash of light, like a spyglass. And the day before that, fresh tracks near the creek. Not ours." My hand went to the pistol on my hip. "You think Mills sent someone?" "Maybe. Maybe just someone he hired. Either way, they found me." "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I thought you'd send me away." I crossed the room and knelt in front of her. "Rebecca, what you did to survive doesn't make you a criminal. It makes you a fighter. I don't care about your past. But if someone's coming, we'll be ready." For the first time since I'd known her, her eyes welled with tears. "Mrs. McKinnon wants to adopt me, doesn't she?" "She does. But we won't force anything on you." She nodded slowly. "Then I need to tell her the truth, too. No more secrets." We sat together for a while, not speaking, just listening to the wind in the eaves and the creak of the old floorboards. That night, I called in my foreman, Tom Bradley, a man I trusted with my life. "We may have trouble," I said. "Strangers watching the property. I want to watch rotation on the bunkhouses, the barn, and the creek trail. Quiet, but sharp." Tom nodded without question. "Anyone gets close, we'll know." Martha didn't say much when I told her. Just wiped her hands, nodded, and said, "Then we protect her." She didn't flinch when Rebecca told her the rest. The name Garrett Mills. The ledger. The fear. She was never safe, Martha whispered. Not until now. That night, Rebecca locked her bedroom door, not out of fear, but out of preparation. And I loaded every rifle in the house. Because somewhere out there, someone wanted to drag her back into the darkness she'd escaped. And I'd be damned if I let them. The attack came 3 nights later, just before dawn. Rebecca had taken to sleeping lightly. Years on the streets had trained her ears. She heard the distant thump of hooves before anyone else. 6 riders. Fast. Silent. She ran to our bedroom, bare feet slapping the floor. "Mr. McKinnon, riders. Coming fast." I was up in an instant, rifle in hand. "How many?" 6 that I counted. Maybe more. Martha was already pulling on her robe. "Is it Mills?" "Don't know. But we're about to find out." I sent her to rouse the ranch hands. Rebecca and I took positions at the front of the house, windows cracked open just enough to rest the barrels of our rifles. In the low morning light, we watched the riders fan out across the property like wolves circling a wounded calf. Then I saw him, the lead rider, and my stomach turned to stone. Jake Winters, the hand I'd run off weeks ago. His face was bruised and half-healed, but that same sneer curled his lip. And behind him, a few I recognized from old wanted posters. Hired guns. Bad ones. "McKinnon," Jake hollered from the front gate. "Send out the girl, and nobody gets hurt." I shouted back, "You're trespassing. Clear out while you still can." "This ain't about you, old man. It's about her. She stole something from our employer." Rebecca's jaw clenched. "The ledger," she whispered. I looked at her. "You still have it?" She nodded. "Sewn inside the lining of my old dress. The one from Galveston. The same one she'd kept hidden in her chest like a last insurance policy." Just then, 2 shots rang out from the east side of the barn. Return fire from our lookout post. Tom Bradley and one of the boys crouched in the hayloft. Jake's men scattered for cover. Glass shattered near the parlor. I heard boots on the porch. I ran to cover the front door. "Rebecca, get the shotgun. Watch the kitchen." She nodded and disappeared. The next sound was a gunshot from the kitchen. I rushed in, heart in my throat, and found one of Jake's men sprawled halfway through the broken back window, moaning, blood pouring from his shoulder. Rebecca stood over him, reloading the double barrel with shaking hands. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. That one's not getting back up soon. The fighting went on for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. Our men had good positions and better reason. But Jake and his gang had firepower, and they weren't afraid to die. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. White flag. Jake's voice cut across the yard. Coming in to talk. I stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Come ahead, slow. He rode up 10 paces and dismounted, arms raised. His grin was cocky, but his eyes were cautious. Let's keep this simple, he said. Give us the girl. We ride away. No harm to you or your people. You think I'd hand over a child to men like you? She ain't a child. She's a thief. That ledger she took? It's not just names. It's payroll, bribes, protection fees. Mills wants it back. I felt Rebecca step up beside me, shotgun resting against her shoulder. I'll give you the book, she said. Jake's grin widened. But I want something in return. He laughed. You're not in a position to make demands, sweetheart. She didn't flinch. A clean exit. You leave, ride straight out. And you tell Mills I'm dead. That I took a bullet during the shootout. Why would he believe that? Rebecca pulled a knife from her boot. Because you're going to take this. She sliced a strip from her old dress, the one she'd worn at the auction, and pressed it to a shallow cut on her palm. Covered in blood. Burn the rest. Tell him you buried me. Jake hesitated. You want the ledger? She said, eyes locked. That's the price. He glanced around, at my rifle, at our men reloading behind the fence line. Fine. But if he finds out, he won't. She went inside, fetched the book, and handed it over like it weighed 100 pounds. Jake turned, climbed into the saddle, and didn't look back. We watched them disappear into the hills. I turned to Rebecca. That was brave. She stared out across the land. It was survival. I nodded. But it was also the end of something. No, she whispered. It's the beginning. After the gang rode off, the ranch fell into a hush, the kind that settles after blood is spilled but more is feared. I doubled the night patrols. Tom and I checked the perimeter fence every morning. Martha started keeping a rifle propped by the back door. And Rebecca, she didn't flinch once. Not even when we found blood trails near the creek or hoof prints in the scrub. She had seen worse. That much was clear now. One evening, about a week after the attack, we sat on the porch watching the sun sink low. Martha brought out fresh cornbread and coffee, and Rebecca finally spoke. I've been thinking. I raised an eyebrow. That's always dangerous. She smirked, just barely. Then she looked between us, serious again. I want to stay, but not just as help. Not as a servant. Martha leaned forward, barely breathing. Rebecca's eyes stayed on mine. I want to be part of this family, but I want to earn it. You've earned more than you know, I said. She shook her head. I don't want to be adopted like I'm being claimed. I want to prove I belong here, that I can make something of this ranch. Martha reached out and took her hand. You already have. I want to help others, too, Rebecca continued. There are kids like me, ones no one notices. Stuck in cities, sold like mules. Maybe we can take in more. Not a lot, just a few. Give them a chance. I blinked, startled. You want to turn this place into what? A school? No, a home. The silence that followed was heavy. Then Martha whispered, yes. Yes, we can. I smiled. Let's start with one. Within the month, we had our first. A boy named David, age 13, found near the freight depot in town, hungry and mean-eyed. Rebecca took one look at him and said, he's scared, not bad. And she was right. Within weeks, he was feeding calves and sleeping without a knife under his pillow. The second was a girl named Sarah, 12, who couldn't read, but could build a fire faster than most grown men. She took to ranch life like she'd been born in the dust. By spring, we had 5. Rebecca managed them like a general, firm, but fair. She taught them math with cattle ledgers, reading with seed catalogs. She never once played the mother. She was something harder and maybe better. One day, I caught her teaching David how to use a ledger book. He squinted at the numbers and muttered, "Why's this matter?" She didn't even look up. Because numbers are power, and power lets you choose your own future. Martha watched from the doorway and whispered to me, "She's becoming what we never dared dream of." She wasn't just becoming our daughter. She was becoming our legacy. That summer, we drew up the papers. Martha and I signed our names at the county clerk's office. Official. Legal. Rebecca Sullivan became Rebecca McKinnon. We celebrated on the porch with lemonade and music. Tom Bradley brought out his old fiddle. The kids danced barefoot in the grass. And somewhere during the laughter and the setting sun, Rebecca leaned against my shoulder and said, "Do you ever regret that day in Galveston? Only that I didn't bid sooner." She smiled, and I saw something I hadn't seen before: peace. But it wouldn't last. That fall, Texas was hit by the worst drought in 20 years. Water dried up. Cattle dropped like flies. Families packed and fled west. We stayed. And the real test, the one we'd spent years unknowingly preparing for, was about to begin. The drought hit like a hammer. By September, Brazos County was cracked and yellow. The ponds dried to mud. The air smelled of dust and dying cattle. Neighbors came knocking, asking how we were holding out. Most didn't last the month. They sold their herds for pennies and left with wagons full of children and grief. But we stayed. The McKinnon Ranch had weathered hardship before: bad winters, lean years, storms that took roofs and barns. But this was different. Water was life, and it was vanishing. I gathered everyone: the hands, the kids, Rebecca, Martha, in the barn one evening as the sun bled red through the cracks. "We need to talk," I said. "This is going to get worse before it gets better. Cattle won't survive another month unless we find water or sell down the herd." "What about us?" asked Sarah, the youngest girl, her voice small. "Will you send us away?" Martha stepped forward. "Absolutely not. You are our family. All of you. We faced this together." There were nods, murmurs, but the fear didn't leave the air. David, now 17, tall and broad-shouldered, spoke up. "We'll do more. Take extra shifts. Walk the line for leaks. Whatever it takes." Rebecca said nothing, but I saw the wheels turning behind her eyes. Later that night, she came into the study, spread out a map, and pointed. "There's a spring here," she said. "Tom mentioned it last winter. Said it's dried up, but maybe it's just buried under brush. If we dig deep enough." She didn't have to finish. We were saddled and riding before dawn. It took 3 days. Dust choked our throats. Shovels blistered our hands. But we hit water. Not much, just a trickle at first. Then a stream. Enough to save the herd. Enough to keep the garden alive. Enough to keep us alive. The children hauled buckets like seasoned ranch hands. Rebecca rationed feed and taught the older ones how to rotate pasture. She tracked every penny, every calf, every bale of hay. I watched in quiet awe. The girl I'd bought for $50 was now running the operation better than I ever had. One night in late October, I found Martha standing in the kitchen, staring at Rebecca through the window. "She's the strongest one of us all," she whispered. "She holds this whole place together." I nodded. "She is this place now." The next day, I called her into the study. She walked in with dust on her boots and a ledger under her arm. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "Something's right." Martha stood beside me. "We want to make you a partner." Rebecca blinked. "What?" "Not just in name," I said. "In truth. Equal share in the ranch, the land, the cattle. A full McKinnon." She stared at us, speechless. "You've earned it," Martha said. 10 times over. Rebecca set the ledger down slowly. "But what happens if I have children of my own?" "Get married?" "Then you raise them here," I said. "If you want. Or you go. But this will always be yours. You made this ranch into something more than land and cattle. You made it into home." She looked at the dusty floorboards, then up at us. "I accept," she said, voice barely a whisper. Martha cried. I did too, though I pretended it was just the wind. That winter, when the rains finally came, the land turned green like it was breathing again. We lost some cattle, but none of the children. Not one. And for the first time in a long while, the McKinnon Ranch didn't just survive. It thrived. 6 years passed. By the spring of 1899, the McKinnon Ranch had become something more than cattle and fences. It was a refuge, a school, a second chance. We had taken in over 30 children by then, most broken in some way. All of them changed. Some stayed, some left, but none were the same as when they came. Rebecca, now 20, ran the place like a general with a teacher's heart. She managed the books, trained the older kids, rode out with Tom to negotiate contracts. Buyers from as far as Kansas City sent letters asking for her by name. The girl I bought for $50 had become a force of nature. One morning, I found her in the study with a boy named Marcus, 12, sharp, and full of anger. She was showing him how to calculate cattle yield based on grazing rotation. "You get this right," she told him, "and nobody can cheek you. Not in town, not in life." He stared at her, confused. Why are you teaching me all this? She looked at him for a long moment. Because someone once taught me, she said, and it saved my life. That afternoon, she came to me on the porch, sat beside me, and pulled off her gloves. Samuel, she said, I've been thinking. That's how most trouble starts. She smirked. You ever regret buying me? I shook my head. Best $50 I ever spent. She nodded. I've been asked to speak at the county hall next month. About the ranch. About what we do here. Good. People should know. But there's more. She hesitated. I've had offers. Marriage. Land. Even a school out east wants me to teach. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice even. And what do you want? I think this is my life, Samuel. These children. This land. I don't think I want a husband. I don't think I want kids of my own. That's allowed. She smiled. I just keep thinking, what if my calling isn't to raise my children, but to raise the ones the world forgot? I nodded slowly. That's not just a calling. That's legacy. By summer, the newspapers had picked up the story. The McKinnon miracle, they called it. A ranch turned orphanage. A girl turned leader. Martha wept when she read the headlines. At the fall harvest, we hosted our biggest gathering yet. Dozens of former kids returned, now grown, many with families of their own. David, now a blacksmith. Sarah, a schoolteacher. Even Jake Winter's younger brother, who had come to us after the raid, now ran cattle of his own in Amarillo. That night, we lit lanterns and told stories under the stars. Rebecca stood and raised her glass. Family, she said, voice strong. It isn't who you're born to. It's who fights for you. Who sees the good when no one else does. This place saved me. You saved me. She looked at Martha, then at me, and I'll spend the rest of my life passing that gift on. The crowd raised their glasses. To the McKinnon Ranch. To chosen family. To second chances. Later, as the fire crackled low and the stars spread wide overhead, Rebecca sat beside me once more, older now, wiser, but with the same fire in her eyes. You still think I was a mistake? She asked. I reached for her hand. No, I think you were a miracle.